Hello. Today I'm sitting on the floor because that just kind of feels like the vibe. I hope you guys are ready for another fun interior design chat. Today I'm talking about space planning and how to optimize the layout of your living space. And I think this is a good topic because a lot of times when I see people's homes that they feel like they need to redesign or improve it somehow, it's not even a matter of buying new furniture or actually changing the pieces they own. It's actually just a matter of like moving things around. So today I'm not talking about any tips for people that are like renovating their home or building a new home. We're just talking about your stuff and where and how you put it. So whether you rent your home or you're just not renovating right now, get excited because maybe at the end of this video you'll get inspired and you can stand up and go move your furniture around, which is fun. I mean, I think that's fun, at least. Okay, so just like overall big picture, how to think about your space plan or furniture layout. I think that there's three really important things to sort of consider that you should always keep at front of mind when you're making these decisions. The first thing is the function of a room. Probably not surprising to hear me say that. But take, for example, like a living room. Do you think that the function of your living room is primarily for watching TV, or is it socializing or reading a book and relaxing or napping or whatever? Because your space plan can actually have a really big impact on how you use your space and how it feels to be there. So give it some thought about how you want it to feel. Like, do you want your room to feel like a more private, closed off, relaxing retreat from the rest of the house? Or do you want it to feel like connected and open to other spaces? And once you've considered the function of the space, you obviously really need to consider and respond to the built elements in your home. So maybe you have like a fireplace or a window with a really nice view that you don't want to block, or maybe like a built-in bar or built-in storage cabinet or things like that. The actual built-in features of the space should obviously inform like where you put your things, because a good space plan is going to work in harmony with the existing architecture of a room and is not going to sort of combat or harm the function of any of the existing elements in your room. And most importantly, you really need to think about like entrances and doors and hallways and staircases and any sort of built element that's going to influence the circulation through your space. Because I think that's genuinely like the most overlooked element in space planning. And a lot of times when a room feels like a little funky or off, it's because the space plan isn't being like considerate of circulation and the paths of travel through a space. So like, again, with a living room example, maybe you need to walk through your living room to get to a kitchen. That should be like a huge consideration when you're deciding where to put your furniture and how you're laying out your design. Because if not, it can end up feeling like really awkward and problematic. It sounds a little silly, but it can actually be really helpful to draw a diagram of your room with the furniture and then over the top of it, just like sketch out the main paths of travel that people in your home are using often. Because once you can actually like visualize that in front of you, sometimes the right space plan can become really clear. Okay, so the function of your space, the built-in elements, and the circulation and path of travel. Those are the three things that like should be the highest priority when you're deciding on your space plan. But I have a lot of more minute, detailed opinions about layouts that just sort of help a vibe feel right. So I'm going to kind of dive into those now. And let me just give this like disclaimer. I don't think that the things I'm about to say are like a strict doctrine or hard rules. They obviously won't work in every space because every single space is unique and has its own like parameters or limitations. These are just meant to be sort of like thought-provoking questions that can maybe help you determine your space plan a little bit better. There's almost never like a one-size-fits-all rule to design, okay? Okay, so the first thing I think that you should consider that maybe a lot of people overlook is the first thing that you see when you walk into a room, because it's always much more comfortable and inviting if when you walk into a room, you're looking at like a large piece of furniture. So say like a big sofa or a bed or something that feels like it's like facing you and feels like kind of open and inviting. And this also goes both ways, because when you're in a space and you're sitting on the sofa, it's much more comfortable if you can see the entrance of a room. I think that's just kind of like a human innate feeling that like we're more comfortable when we can see the entrance to a space. I can think of a million reasons that a room like wouldn't allow for that. So if you can't have your sofa facing your primary entrance for some reason, you could consider getting like a cool room divider and putting that behind the sofa. That could definitely bring like a much more comfortable sense of enclosure, so you don't feel like so like open behind you. Or if you have the space for it, you could get like a console table and put some pretty large decor items on it. Just something that'll be like tall behind the sofa so that you don't feel so like exposed to the entrance of a space. It's just like a vibe thing. I don't know how to explain it, but it does make a big difference. Okay, and the next thing is like such a interior designer cliche, I feel like, but I very much agree with it, and that is pulling your furniture away from the walls when possible. This obviously only applies if you have the space for it, but if you do, there's furniture that feels like it should be against a wall, and there's furniture that doesn't. So things like a bookcase or a buffet table, or generally like storage pieces of furniture, feel good when they're against a wall. But furniture that I like to think of almost as like more like social, like sofas and dining tables and armchairs and things like that, they feel a lot better when they're not like pushed to the perimeter of the room, and they're actually kind of like coming together in these like central clusters. Does that make sense? It's just like such a vibe thing, but it feels so much better when these things are like anchored to one another in the center of a room and not like locked to all the walls at the far edges. And I think there's two ways to really successfully achieve that in a living room, and that is having like a really solid coffee table that everything can kind of like come around, and then also having an area rug that can kind of anchor all of the furniture. If you have the space for it, an area rug should always go under all of the furniture. But if not, at the very least, you should have an area rug going under the front two legs of all of your seating. This is just gonna make everything feel much more intentional and tied together. If you have an area rug that's really small and is like coming up close to the sofa like this, the vibes just get really thrown off. I can't really explain it, but it doesn't feel like cohesive or tied together in any way. So if possible and you have the space for it, bring your furniture off the walls and sort of anchor them to one another in the center of the space. It might not be like totally intuitive, but having the gap between like the back of your sofa and a wall, for example, it just makes the space feel so much bigger and airier and like nicer to be in. So unless you're in like a really tiny apartment or a tiny home or something, I would really recommend trying to pull your sofa away from the wall, even if it's just like 30 centimeters or a foot for my fellow Americans. It can really go a long way. Okay, and the third thing I came up with when I sat down to write my like nitpicky opinions is the spacing between furniture. I think this has some pretty obvious applications, like having the right spacing between your seating and your tables or surfaces so that they're comfortable to reach and things don't feel like they're like floating far away from one another. But when you're spacing your furniture, you should also consider sort of like non-physical functions. So for example, like the distance you're sitting from a TV, the general rule of thumb is to have twice the width of the TV between you and the TV. And also thinking about the distance between your seating, make sure you have a comfortable distance for conversation. I think sometimes people that are designing really large rooms don't consider this, and they end up having like their chairs and sofa very far away from one another, and it ends up just feeling like pretty isolating and almost like a hotel lobby or something. So make sure that the distance between all your furniture has been thoughtfully considered, because it can have a really, really serious impact on the function of a space and how it feels to use it. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is all of the furniture being pointed at the TV. If you're like a TV watching household, that's totally cool. This is a judgment-free zone. Well, I guess it's not a judgment-free zone, but We're not about like criticizing anyone's lifestyle. If you're 99% of the time watching TV in your living room, that's totally cool. But even for that small percentage of time that maybe you have people over or you're sitting with people in your living room and not watching TV, I think it's really important to have like a circle of conversation. There's nothing less comfortable than like hanging out with a group and you're all like lined up on a sofa facing a TV that's off. So if you have the space for it, try to get like an accent chair or a stool or an ottoman or something that someone can sit on to like round out the circle of conversation. And also with larger furniture, it's really okay in my mind to have like a large sofa facing your TV and then other big pieces of furniture like armchairs or seating at like a 90-degree angle to the TV. When you have a big group, people will still be able to see the TV, but also when you're not using it, you can kind of like talk to one another and face one another without being in this like lineup. Okay, and the fifth thing I want to talk about is something that I hate more than anything else in space planning, and it's time to come out and share it and make sure none of you are doing it in your homes because it's really, really awful. This one is actually a rule, okay? The other ones are like things to consider. This one is something that I demand you change. And that is furniture pushed into the corner of a room at a 45-degree angle. It sounds so specific when I say it like that, but it's so common and it's so awful. So what I'm talking about is like very like boxy square furniture, like maybe like a TV console, or I've even seen people do it with like side tables and bookshelves and stuff. And it leaves this like wasted triangular space behind the piece of furniture. And it just looks really, really bad. First of all, you're obviously like wasting so much space, and it also just looks like very odd and amateur. I feel like the biggest reason that people do this is, again, they feel like they want all the furniture to be able to see the TV well. Like I see this really often with TVs on like TV consoles. And if you feel like your space plan absolutely demands that you need a 45-degree TV in the corner of your room, I would really, really recommend investing in a TV like this that has legs and is kind of like its own object independent from the wall, because then it can kind of like exist at a 45-degree angle and look a lot less weird without sort of like cutting off the corner of the room visually. This will just feel like so much more thoughtful and intentional. I think this also applies to like very boxy armchairs. How many times have I seen like a big square chair pushed into the corner of the room so that's actually like touching the walls at the corners, and then they just like twist the knife by putting like a floor lamp behind it? This looks so not good. Again, if you feel like it's absolutely necessary to have a chair at a 45-degree angle in the corner, get a chair that's more like rounded in the back and pull it away from the wall as much as possible so that you're not creating this like harsh triangle of negative space. Another time I see this really often is with like full-length mirrors, where people will just like put it up against the wall in a corner. Again, if you feel like you need to do this, get a full-length mirror that has like its own legs and can be pulled away from the wall and like exist as its own object, similar to the TV. It's just gonna feel so much better. Okay, I absolutely have like a million more thoughts on this, but I'll leave it there for this video. And again, thank you for watching, and make sure you like and comment and subscribe. A lot of you have been asking me for a home tour, and the truth is, since my boyfriend and I moved to Copenhagen last August, we haven't really been able to like settle down in an apartment for a variety of reasons. But our current lease is ending soon, so we're in the market for a new amazing Copenhagen apartment. And now with this new channel, I'm really excited to like take you guys along the journey of looking for an apartment, moving in, and like fully designing it. So that's definitely going to be like a series of videos that I'm doing soon. So get excited, because I'm excited. And also, if you happen to be Danish and own an apartment in Copenhagen and you'd like to rent it to a very sweet couple, let me know. Message me, because It's hard to find an apartment in Copenhagen. And yeah, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.